Welcome for part 3 of Off-Grid Alaska Cabin Building. So we put the walls up. It took us a couple days. We probably could have done it quicker, but we were kind of taking our time a little bit. These are 2x6 boards right here. And when we framed this whole thing in, we actually made each wall in 2 segments because they're extremely heavy to stand those walls up, especially the ones with like the big window headers and stuff. So we got all those walls stood up, and then after we finally finished with that, we started putting the sheeting on the outside. So this is primed and grooved T111 siding, and this siding here is going to be the actual siding for this building, and we will actually paint this so it's not just this primed gray color. We're thinking about painting it red, and we put that on pretty quick after the walls just to add some stiffness so that when we put the posts and the ridge beam up, that it would not rock side to side as much. We also have all these braces, which obviously we're going to take these guys down, but we'd be on the house with a level, just making sure it's all level, holding that level up there, and then nail it in so we got some good straight and level walls. Next, we built these posts, and actually my dad did most of the work on these posts here. It didn't take him very long, but I and my sister were actually working and running our sled dogs when he was making these, but these are what's holding that ridge beam up there up. And there is a post on either side, if you're wondering. And also, one post in the middle, because when we got these beams, these rough sawn beams for our floor, they're supposed to be 20 footers. Well, they ended up only being 16 footers, so they gave us 2 extra ones for free, actually. So we decided to make that into the ridge beam. So we made this little wall here. It's kind of going to be an extension on the bedroom wall, which the bedroom is actually going to be over in that corner there. And when we made this wall, we already had the other 2 posts in. So my dad snapped a chalk line across the floor here, and thinking that it would help us make the right spot for that wall. Well, we put the wall up, and then we realized that we had snapped the chalk lines on the edge of the other posts, and this wall here was in the middle of the chalk line, which meant that they were about 3-4 inches off or so. So what we ended up having to do was rip the whole wall out and move it in my direction this way to center it back up, and then finally rebuild it so that we could put the ridge beam up. We also put some 3/4 inch plywood up on here just to help add some stiffness for this wall so the cabin won't rock side to side at all. All right, now let's talk about the ridge beam. So that is a very large beam up there. Thankfully, it's in 2 segments, and each of those beams are 300 pound plus a piece. So you got about 650 pounds, maybe even 700 pounds sitting up there right now, if you include both beams together. And how do we lift them from the floor? Sorry about all the junk down there. It's an active work zone, I guess. How do we get them lifted from the floor up to the ridge beam? And that's what we're gonna go into next. So a friend of ours who lives down the way a little bit, who's actually a builder, actually let us use some of his scaffolding for a little while. That was super nice of him and super great for us because it would have been extremely hard to get that ridge beam up without it, and we probably would have had to rent some. So we do have a small tractor, but if you see, I mean, it's about 4 feet from the ground up to the platform, and it only made it about 4 feet higher up, so it really could not lift it very far. And then we had those 2 rows of scaffolding, the 5 foot and the 10 foot, and the peak up there is 13 feet. So it was not very far to get on top of the 5 foot scaffolding. And then I and my dad and my sister had to lift it another 5 feet to get on top of the 10 foot scaffolding. So that was a pretty big when you're lifting such a heavy beam, but we managed. And then we also this wall here helped us, because that could kind of be another stage for us there, a little bit lower than the 10 foot scaffolding. And then finally, we were able to lift it the last 3 feet to get up to the ridge beam. So I actually have a time-lapse video of us putting this ridge beam up, or one of them at least. I was trying to get some drone videos and some other videos, and They just weren't turning out, but I did end up getting some sort of a video. I'm gonna play that at the end here, and thanks for watching. See you for the next episode of Off-Grid Alaska Cabin Building. So right here, we are pulling one segment of the ridge beam from the tractor onto the first level of scaffolding. Next, we had to lift it 5 feet onto the 10-foot scaffolding. We also used the wall to help us with a step to bring it to the top. This may look easy and not a very big beam, but believe me, it was pretty hard. We then moved our scaffolding boards onto the 10-foot section, so we had something to stand on when we made the final push to bring the beam up to its final stance. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you for episode 4, Off-Grid Alaska Cabin Building.